Hello everyone, my name is James and this is Real Biased Gaming. Today I'm going to be going over the patch 3.10 for League of Legends, and I'm going to be covering all the champion changes in this video. First off, we have Ashe. Now, just a really small change here. She actually stacks her passive a little bit faster. Awesome. As I've actually said before in previous videos, I really think Ashe should get an auto crit on her next attack. I think that should be her passive. Like after 3, 4, 5 seconds, without attacking anything, her next attack is an auto crit. But maybe that crit only does like 120% damage, and then the stacks on her passive actually increase the percentage of the crit damage. I think that would just make her so much, that passive would be so much more reliable and so much more interesting if something like that happens. So I'm still hoping that that Riot picks up on that and changes the passive around eventually. But this, I mean, it makes her just that tiny little, couple percent better because of how quickly her passive does stack now. Moving on to Elise. Elise got a couple nerfs this patch, which is probably for the best. Spiderlings were the big focus from Riot here. Overall, they were definitely nerfed. They get less than half their health at max level, and a 15% nerf on the damage reduction they receive from area attacks. But the armor and magic resist buff is really big as well, meaning true damage on the Spiderlings won't be happening at all. I think this puts the spiders in a good place, kind of where they should be. They still can hurt when you have 4 of them attacking you. They still can get in the way of skill shots and kind of clutter the battlefield during team fights. But they can be taken out a little easier from, say, champions with Ravenous Hydra are attacking Elise or other champions with a lot of AoE type abilities. It's just one of those things that becomes uncounterable, as the spiders had almost no counterplay, but now it comes a little more in line with everything else in the game. Now, I really have the same thing to say, actually, about the volatile Spiderling. You could not outrun that thing. Maokai's saplings can be outrun with level 2 boots pretty easily, but it was just not the case with the Spiderling from Elise's W, and I really think this change was needed. That thing was way too fast. Now, Repel got nerfed, and it makes it a little harder to tower dive without a minion wave. Elise has a ton of good stuff in her kit, and these changes overall to Elise, they don't really hit any of her main power, but it does reduce those peripheral mechanics that were making her, really accidentally much stronger than her main kit actually would suggest. Now going on to Karthus. Lay Waste just becomes a little easier to cast while Karthus' passive is working. Pretty simple. Now, Defile actually receives a slight nerf, mostly focused on his late game, the reduction in AP ratio. It means that a Karthus with 400 AP loses about 20 damage per tick on Defile. It doesn't seem like a ton of damage, but those ticks start really hurting late game, especially as Karthus gets bigger than having just 400 AP. A simple nerf with direct effect on Karthus is late game, just bringing down his damage a little bit. Now, Master Yi, obviously with a whole bunch of changes, I'll probably cover those in a separate video, only focusing on Master Yi, because there's a lot to talk about. Now, Ryze got some pretty significant nerfs in this patch. Range reduction on all 3 of his non-ultimate abilities. This really makes him rely on his ultimate and the extra speed boost that he now gets to maintain casting range on enemies. Ryze is really strong with his synergy with mana items and becomes a terrifying presence late game. The range, to me, really made him strong enough in the early game, just, strong enough to keep up with people. He isn't dominant early game by any means, but the range did give him the advantage in some matchups, and they kept him in the lane in others against matchups that he would, lose pretty bad. I think this change accomplished the goal from Riot, but I wonder if it pushes Ryze's laning phase so low that he won't be seen much at all going forward. Now, Thresh loses some serious early game survivability with 6 armor lost, or 33% if you want to be sensationalist, and he loses 41 health. Also, with the changes to his soul collection, his scaling is going to go a lot slower early game. It's going to take a little longer for him to actually get up to levels, say, at like 10 minutes than he would have before. This will make him a much easier target to execute by an AD carry in lane, through those levels like 1 through 6, 1 through 8. I can't say this will make him less ban-worthy. I can only assume solo queue will start by just, putting the tip of their toe in the water and leaving him open rarely and until someone decides, he's still, really scary and easily bannable. or he's easy enough to counter now, easy enough to kill, and the people leave him open. Now, moving on to Twisted Fate here, I think the change to loaded dice is actually really nice for TF. He's a frail champion and loses lane to a lot of other mages. Gets what? An extra 4 extra gold per CS actually could be really, really nice. I say 4 because apparently a 6 is going to happen a lot more often than a 1. But just getting that extra gold off of each minion kill means that he'll still be able to scale up decently well, even if, he is behind in CS. Now, the pick a card change really just makes Twisted Fate a slightly higher skill champion. Timing the cards and, when they need to be used will be much more essential for Twisted Fate players, but it still has a very short cooldown, and still yellow card is as scary as ever. Now, Vayne took a hit in her ultimate at its first 2 ranks only. This is interesting, kind of seeing what Riot is doing this patch, and Vayne is actually the perfect example here. Vayne and Ryze. They're some of the most powerful late-game champions. They can shred tanks, and they're harder to kill because of how mobile Vayne is and how tanky Ryze becomes. Yeah, I find it interesting that Riot took this patch to hit Ryze and Vayne's early game when it is their late game that actually makes them so scary and makes them such powerful champions. I do think Ryze was hit a lot harder than Vayne, but still, 100 seconds on her ultimate and an extra 30 seconds on the cooldown will really affect her laning and mid-game phases to the negative. Now, on a final quick note here, Zac had his Elastic Slingshot damage reduced starting at his 2nd rank. Now, Zac has an absolute ton of base damage. It's easily augmented with just a little bit of AP, and usually Riot's philosophy on CC abilities is that they're not the biggest damage abilities. Again, usually that's what Riot has mentioned in the past is where they try and go with that. Especially I remember with Jace and his E, with the hammer, when he pushes somebody back, he used to deal way too much damage, so they scaled that back a little because it's supposed to be just kind of a get away from me, kind of a save himself kind of ability, not a giant damage dealer. Zac gets a ton of damage from his slingshot, though, which is kind of his second biggest CC ability besides his ultimate, of course. And hitting his base numbers on that ability really does make a lot of sense. I think Zac is actually finished when it comes to balance. I doubt we'll be seeing him in any more patches as we do go forward. And that actually does it for the champion changes in patch 3.10. Thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe if you want to see more patch discussion, and comment if you want to add your thoughts on any of these changes. Once again, my name is James, and this is Real Biased Gaming.